about this.
Okay, good, because I'm not sure how much I'll have to say.
Oh, I can just talk. I'm going to try to keep it focused on the movie, but yeah, I'm not going to do a book review, but I'm going to include. I think the book is a very uniquely critical component to this kind of movie. This movie in particular.
We are live.
I am Ricordo.
Tell your friends you're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
And tonight we have another very special episode. We have the 1984 movie, 1984.
Filmed in 1984.
Technically released in 1984. It was released in America in 85, but it was they went so far for this movie is that they did the production occurred within the time constraints as given in the book. So
Yes.
so maybe misplaced, but hey, good on you. Go ahead and do that. So,
Yeah.
I guess Nathan, do you have? I mean, I guess we all have this. I didn't even realize because I've attempted to watch this several times and I just get bored almost every time. I don't know. Same thing with reading the book. I did put the audiobook on this time, and of course I fell asleep to it. But yeah, it's all right.
It's a happy book to fall asleep to.
I mean, you know so much about it through pop culture, but also pop culture will teach you the wrong things about 1984. Yes. So it's one of those things where it's like anybody can identify with it, but it's so easy to misinterpret. So like that's a fun thing with the book. So,
well, yeah, the thing with Orwell and his teachings, and I'm going to say their teachings, writings, whatever, is everyone thinks the other side is this. Everyone is, we'll just take the political spectrums in America because it's the only country I've ever lived in and the only one I ever will. It's the only one I know. It's pretty complicated, but also dumb at the same time, which is like, okay, it's a uniquely American thing. But the both sides of the political spectrum think the other side is Big Brother and the thought police. Whenever one group is in ascendancy and the other's in the out, that's always the accusation. And everyone is completely right for saying that, but they're saying it for the wrong reasons. Let's take, for example, the Patriot Act. It's like, oh, this is the beginning of the end. This is the thought police. They can monitor us. They can watch us. They don't require warrants. They, whatever, you want to believe. And it's like, yeah, they're becoming Big Brother. And yes, they are. They are indeed doing that. And then when the other side like says, well, we're going to start, you can't say this on Twitter or you can't do that anymore. It's like, oh, they're being the thought police. They're controlling your thoughts and taking away your freedoms. It's like, yes, they are. But again, they're not doing it just for the sake of that. None of this is happening in a vacuum. That's what people get wrong when they start calling each other Big Brother. Is it's like, well, yeah, technically it all matches up, and Orwell wrote it that way.
Well, I mean, the difference between the Twitter thought police is that like they're using the capitalist system against itself.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, they're a private citizen who doesn't like this other private citizen's musings, and so they go to their private company that the country considers a person, and they tell them about it, and like, oh, we don't like that, so we fire this person because we have every right to, because we're a person and not a government.
Yeah.
And then they're like, they're infringing on my governmental rights. It's like, were you harmed by a government entity? It's like, no. Well, then fuck you.
Yeah, I mean, the argument gets weird there, though, because then they allow whoever, like I said, whoever they like, whoever said private entity likes, will allow the other toxic shit that's equally as destructive, weird, and pointless to be splattered all over as if it's great. It's like, well, we don't have a problem with that. But, then the whole argument is like, well, the internet was technically built at government expense, and very few of these tech companies are really profitable without government subsidies. So are they government entities or not? They don't act like it. They don't report it, but, they draw.
Are they a government entity if they're publicly traded, privately owned? Well, I guess that's not the same thing. If they're publicly traded and they get government assistance, but then somehow avoid all sorts of Uh,
Taxes.
well, taxes. What do you call that? Oversight. It's
Yeah. Yeah, it's
but I don't
weird.
know. But even the Twitter police isn't the Twitter police anymore. Like I don't know what the hell Twitter is anymore. It's
Oh,
like
I'm just using that as an example of the lurid Big Brother fantasies that come from both sides.
well, I mean, I just know, like in the early days of Twitter, it's like, yes, let's stop saying the R word, and that's why we say the R word on the podcast and other things like that. And now, the F word is now a different F word. Like you can say fuck all you want, nobody cares. It's the other, and it's like, okay, yeah, we moved on. We found other ways to basically use those same words in different ways. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, but like Twitter isn't necessarily like that more anymore. It seems to be just all hate and all the police all at the same time, and nobody's solving any problems.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's chaos now, but it's also like that's like kind of a feature of democracy. Is it's like, oh, it's just chaos. So
Well, I mean, I also don't know how much stuff is just taken over by bots because that's always a thing. Which Elon,
sometimes I wonder if like Twitter is not just like computers arguing with each other over who is the purest Nazi, and that's
yeah,
really what's going on. There's no humans involved in this activity anymore.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
don't
Elon
know.
claims to have gotten rid of that, but it doesn't feel like because I don't know if you.
Now, when has he said something that has not like turned out to be true? Though that's what you got to look. You really got to analyze that and be like, wow.
I don't know if you tweet 100 times a day and you're wrong 99 times of the day. I guess your fans will praise the 1% you got right.
Well, no, that's like everything you said was right
Yeah,
because it's important that that's what's important, not what's being said. It's that it's right.
yeah. But I don't know if you've ever like. Well, also like the algorithm stuff is so awful. It's like you can't escape it, and like it's become completely. Because what was cool about like Twitter in the early days is like you follow some people and then like, hey, I found this website, and it was like other people doing Google searches for you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I like this person, let's see what they like, and they'll share it, and then you'll find other things. Where it's like that kind of discovery just doesn't seem to happen anymore. Although Blue Sky Social is basically back like the old days of Twitter, because on there like they're not surfacing a bunch of stuff on the algorithm, at least until they become publicly traded. But for now, it's like you're just seeing stuff from the people you follow. It's not all this extra garbage.
Yeah,
Or
when I remember Twitter was cool and I wasn't a big tweeter, I just liked is like I would like, oh, what movies is Patton Oswalt talking about? And then I
yeah,
would watch that's what Twitter was for me like 10 years ago. Now it's like I don't even know if I have an account anymore.
but I don't know if you've like I don't know if you've ever experienced like 4 a.m. Twitter, where
Is
it's
it
like,
just like a fever dream?
well, no, it's like it's like when the propaganda starts.
Oh, okay.
When light hits the East Coast, I guess, because it'd be 5 a.m. there or whatever. Well, I guess it'd be 6 or whatever when light hits. Um, you just start to see like the bots come in and conservatives like trying to get like a hashtag going, because like that like that's just what they love to do is like, let's see what something sticks, because all they need to do is get one thing to stick and then just everything will fall in their place. It's like flip flop. Like that's all you need to do. Go woke, go broke, which I don't think has actually worked yet, but they love it because it rhymes. So
It is catchy.
uh,
See, that's the thing is Orwell never envisioned this world. The commodity
yeah,
of
well,
human
yeah, well,
value is
yeah. Well, I mean,
stupidity.
the thing is, yeah, Orwell stuff is like there's a lot of intention behind it.
Yeah.
Um, where here it's just, it's almost like subconscious how stupid everything is. Nobody intended to make it this stupid.
No, the stupidity's just become the flour that holds the cookie together now. It's just like, oh, it's intrinsically important that it be this dumb because like humor, like what I get out of it is humor. I get humor out of that stuff. I think that stuff's funny. But for some people, it's like it's life and death, and which is sad because it's like, well, don't you have anything else to do?
So yeah, anyways, 1984 came out in 1984. October 10th, 1984, London premiere. Nathan, I'm guessing, do you have a history with this movie?
Well, not when it came out because I would have been 10 years old. I don't think mom and dad were going to take me to see 1984 in theaters. As I remember discovering this movie because of the Macintosh computer ads that came
Yeah.
out at the same time.
Ridley Scott directed.
That Ridley Scott directed that were basically just a parody of the 2-3 minutes hate or whatever that happened at the beginning of the movie. And then it's like, oh, I learned about it. It's like, well, that's based on like just the totalitarian society and their brainwashing of their people or whatever. But I discovered the book I think when I was 10 years old, and I read it, and it became one of those lifelong companion books for me, like Lord of the Rings, or it's stuff I would reread constantly. And I don't think I really discovered or could get access to the movie till I was like 14, 15 maybe, because what was this rated? Was it rated R?
Yeah, it's got to be R. It's got
Yeah, there's a lot of
nudity and
nudity in it.
violence and everything.
So I really couldn't access it. Like, couldn't rent R-rated movies everywhere at the time when I was growing up, place especially. So, but I remember I was seeing it when I was a teenager, and I thought it's like, well, this is a fairly good like vision of what the book is.
Yeah.
And then of course I later discovered like there's been other adaptations of this movie which like almost nobody remembers. There's one where like Peter Cushing plays Winston Smith.
Huh.
But those were what did they say? Like those were almost like if Ray Bradbury wrote 1984, because they were like futuristic looking. They were made in the 50s and 60s, which is kind of like, because 1984, like in some libraries and some classifications, it falls under science fiction.
Yeah,
I mean, or alternate history, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, when was the book written? Like the 50s or something?
1948, I believe.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, technically, it's a sci-fi book from when it was constructed.
Yeah. So the earlier movies they made about it were, before this one, were kind of like very clean and futuristic looking.
Yeah.
Which was like not actually what was described in the book at all.
I mean, there's technology that's futuristic, but everything's kind of bleak and falling apart.
Yeah.
I mean, at least to the characters in the book, because that's sort of the point, is that not everything is falling apart. It's just falling apart for the majority of the people. And of course, you got Brazil, which is just kind of like, what if 1984 was a comedy? Which actually is kind of brilliant because it makes it more palatable, but then it's even more suffering at the end when nothing works out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, this I forgot all the totalitarian themed movies that came out around the time. Because there was Brazil came out. What was the other movie this time frame that came out? Where it was kind of, I can't think of it now, but yeah, there were a lot of movies like this kind of thought was in the air. Of dystopia was on everyone's lips because it was the 80s, which is not a good time.
Yeah,
or it was a great time depending on who you were.
Yeah, that's we got the Reagan and Thatcher. Well, they were in that this time. So,
yep, Reagan and Thatcher. Yeah, I mean, this was almost had World War III a year before. I mean, nobody knew about that at the time, but they knew tensions were high. So this movie came out. It was just it was based on this famous book that came out, and let's see, when did it? So in 1956, there was a feature-length film.
Oh, the first adaptation. Okay.
Yeah, Donald Pleasance was in it as Parsons. I've seen parts of the one. I've seen parts of both of the earlier ones, but yeah, it was kind of weird that there was the older adaptations of it. Like I said, it was very futuristic. They're very BBC. They're almost completely forgotten too. They
Oh,
can't really find them anywhere. So
yeah, probably, yeah. BBC did a lot of production, and their preservation around that time was probably because there's like famous like when they're shooting like Doctor Who on tape, and they would just like record over it to save money rather than
yes,
buying a new tape. And there's just Doctor Who's lost to history because of that.
yeah, they were asking people like, "Hey, if you recorded this on your VHS tape in the early '80s, like, could we get that from you? Because that's the only copy left. Because we like burned up our film stock by accident in a fire."
um, yeah, so this was directed by Michael Radford, who
Yes.
this is kind of like the most famous thing he did.
Yeah.
I think he's sort of a documentarian, yeah, however you say it, yeah. Interesting that he was born in India, but he's not Indian. He's just
So was George Orwell. Well, actually, Eric Blair is his real name, but yeah,
uh,
George Orwell's born in India too.
but
Born
yeah.
under the Raj.
Oh, okay, maybe that's what I got. Like he just had a similar thing. But yeah, this guy he has an English father and an Austrian and Jewish mother. So,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, I think they moved back to England at some point. So he's mostly an English guy. So,
Yeah.
um, cinematographer is Roger Deakins, who
Which is amazing. Like best cinematographer ever you've never heard of. This never won an Oscar. I mean, you've heard
oh,
of
he's
him.
another guy. Okay,
Never won an Oscar. Yeah.
yeah, he's done a lot of he's basically all the good Coen Brothers movies he's done, including No Country for Old Men, which is one of Nathan's favorites.
Yes.
He did like Shawshank Redemption, Blade Runner 2049.
Yep.
So,
Fargo.
yeah.
Dead Man Walking. I mean, yeah. There's nothing. Oh, he did the assassination of Jesse James too.
He's done a lot of good stuff.
The new True Grit.
Oh, he did 1917. I know it's known for being like, hey, one take, even though not really, but whatever. Yeah. That was a movie kind of based on a cinematography, kind of based around cinematography.
Oh, I'm sorry. He won. He has won Academy Awards. He won it for Blade Runner and 1917.
Okay, good.
So finally, okay, but in 2017.
Big Lebowski, so he does, yeah, of course, that's Coen Brothers, so that's comedies as well. When was the last Coen Brothers comedy? They're like split now, right? They don't work together anymore.
I don't know. I haven't heard the last Coen Brothers film I heard of was like the pseudo biopic, the Dylan biopic. That's the last one I remember.
Oh, okay.
No, they did Hail Caesar. I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, yeah, he also shot that.
Yeah. Oh, he did Sicario. Yeah, so this guy's like, as soon as I saw that name, I was like, oh, this is why this movie looks cool.
Yeah.
And then I of course, I bought the Criterion to watch this. So, oh, you got it too?
Yeah.
Okay, did you watch the interview with him?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's actually, he had some amazing. He was talking about what they did to the film stock.
Yeah, I keep I keep talking about it. Like other times I forget what it's called. Here it's called bleach bypass,
Yeah,
which was trying to make a colored film sort of black and white by like retaining, basically some of the retaining a lot of the monochromatic elements of the film. I've also heard it called like silver recovery, but that might be a more deeper version of it. Because here it's a bit more understated. But like this kind of process is like, I think like more noticeable in things like Three Kings or Payday or Payback with Mel Gibson. I think maybe even Saving Private Ryan has some stuff like that.
yeah, Saving Private Ryan had a bunch of stuff in it. That was almost 3 different movies the way they shot that.
Yeah, I just remember that having like kind of a high contrast and Yeah, well, it just has a high contrast. Oh, I guess yeah, Black Hawk Down almost kind of had that look in a way. Um, but back here you had to do it chemically, whereas nowadays you can just do it digitally. Um, and also like around the 90s or whatever, or maybe even been longer, when you can interact with computers. They had what's called a digital intermediate, where it can basically work between what the film does, and you can have a computer work in between thing where you can do a lot of color changes and color corrections and stuff like that. It made that process way easier. You could do a lot neater stuff with film at that time. But now, because it's mostly all digital, now you can just you don't have to have a middleman process anymore. So you can just do it like straight from the hard drive or whatever.
Yeah, but in those interviews, Deakins was saying like Bradford wanted to shoot it in black and white,
Yeah, but they wouldn't allow
and
it.
the studio was like, no, nobody's doing that anymore.
Well, he made it sound like it was more expensive to shoot in black and white, which that could have been a thing. Usually it's not, because that's one of the reasons that like Clerks is shot in black and white, is because the film's cheaper and it's less expensive to
Process.
process.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in this instance, it might have just they might have been they want money for the film, and they're like, yeah, that'll save you money, but then here's all the recent black and white movies that have made money. It's like, well, none of them make this amount of money, so you're not shooting it in black and white.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like the George Orwell's widow did not like the adaptations that came, the film adaptations, or even some of the radio adaptations that came, and so she was really standoffish with who would be licensed to make stuff with it, and then the rights somehow transferred to a lawyer in America who acquired them and wanted to make an American version of 1984 in an American studio, which sounds like a really bad idea. So I guess Michael Radford went to this guy at the last minute and it's like, yeah, let's do this. Come on, it's coming up on the window. And so he gave him the rights to this. They had to get funding. Not a lot of people wanted to fund this.
Yeah.
They basically had to go to Richard Branson at Virgin Films, which was Virgin was more famous as a music thing at that time than a move. So, but yeah, they're like, yeah, we're all in on this. So, but essentially, this movie was made for in U.S. dollars $7.5 million. So it was like £5 million. But I've heard that's weird in the UK because you get all kinds of like government subsidies and
Yeah,
shooting
because
permits and everything are a lot cheaper than they are here. So
like almost like all movie and television production in England is produced by the government.
yeah. So they say for America, you can blow that budget at the time out to about 15 million with the money they save just by getting help. So, but it was, it was actually pretty much shot on the cheap. Everyone said for what they were trying to do. It was like, yeah, it really wasn't a lot of money.
But Roger Deakins would get to do cinematography on The Man Who Wasn't There, a Coen Brother movie that's in black and white. So he eventually got to do a black and white movie.
Yeah, he did get to do that.
That's a weird movie, but it's a good-looking movie. So.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, the Coen brothers know how to make movies. It's just like, are you in the right mood for it? That's the thing. It's kind of like David Lynch. It's like, this all looks great. Am I ready? Do I feel like this tonight? Or do I just want ice cream? What is it?
But yeah, there was kind of a funny thing about like the bleach bypass process. It's like Roger Deakins was talking about, like there was like this Japanese director who was also like a chemist, and like he was like the only one who like he like secreted the process, and he was the only one that knew it. And so I can't even remember how they got it out. Like they either got it out of him or everybody just figured out the trick or whatever. But it was like this. It was a thing that was like hard to do at the time because nobody knew how to do it effectively. So
yeah, and you're committing. You're bleaching. You're using like gas chromatograph techniques on film, and it's like, well, you better hope you don't screw it up.
Well, no, the thing is, no, you're using less bleach to get the look. That's why it's bleach bypass. Is like you're not bleaching it, or you're bleaching it less. Which I guess the fun flip side of that is, I guess the bleach process makes your film less flammable. So the less bleach you use, the more flammable your film is.
Yeah, this might be a one-time showing. The camera just might explode. You know, it's
Well, he did say that they did like their film stock did set some projectors on fire.
oh yeah,
um, that's to say they did something different here because I guess the bleach bypass process. He said something, and I don't know understand it fully. He said something that's usually done in the negative phase, and here they did it like on the positive.
oh okay.
So I have no idea what that means or entails, but it's like, oh, it's different. That's all I know.
It's something lost to time. It's alchemy. Nobody, because you know what they shoot stuff on now? Photoreceptor lenses.
um, but yeah. So there's like a 20-minute interview on the DVD, so that was pretty interesting. He seemed like it's like but it's just a young guy trying to figure things out. So because this is kind of like if you look at his filmography, this is kind of like the first thing on the list that's like famous. It's like, oh, I recognize that.
Yeah.
And then even after that, it takes like 10 years when or something. When he did with Barton Fink, that was like his first Coen Brothers movie he did, and then it was kind of off the races after that.
I think so.
um.
He did Sid and Nancy, the TV show.
Oh yeah.
Air America. Mountains of the Moon is actually a cool movie.
I don't know what that one is.
It's about the guys that discover, or they discovered the through Africa, like through the Amazon, or I don't know. Where did they were explorers in Africa around the Nile.
Yeah.
And I think they actually were the first guys to map it out because it's set in when did it happen? I think it happened in like the 1850s or something.
Okay.
But it's a history movie about like older times that no one in America would really know much about. But it's such a cool looking movie. It's actually compelling.
And so yeah, the screenplay for this was written by Michael Radford and of course based on a book by George Orwell. So,
yeah.
Cast is John Hurt. Oh yeah, I forgot Richard Deakins. So we've seen one of his movies before. We saw he did In Time.
Okay.
Which is not a great movie, but is a cool looking movie. I guess.
I was gonna say it always looks good. Everything he does looks good.
Cast John Hurt, which we last saw in Alien.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Burton, which I don't think we've seen before, and Susanna Hamilton, which I'm pretty sure we haven't seen before. So, this is Richard Burton's last movie.
Yes.
Which I don't really know him, but then they said they did some retrospective stuff in that some of the videos I watched, and like I guess he was famous in what the Spy Who Came In From the Cold.
That's my favorite. I think he played. Was he George Smiley in that? That's the other like role I know him from. That's like the best adaptation of The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. Besides the book. So that's the other thing I know him from. But he's like got this massive.
His top four are Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, 1984, The Spy Came From the Cold, Beckett. Not sure about that.
Okay.
That's his top four in Internet Movie Database.
Well, Beckett's he's the advisor to Henry II.
Oh, okay.
It's in like the 1500s or something. Yeah, Spy Who Came In From the Cold is of course, it's the John le Carre movie. No, he's not.
No, in that movie it says he's Alec Lehman.
Okay, yeah, no, he's not. The other guy's Smiley. The other guy, Rupert Davis. You've seen him in 1,000 things too. But yeah, I remember Richard Burton is in this. I just couldn't remember. Thought he played George Smiley, but no, he's the other guy. This is what people our age would know him the most for, though, is this movie.
Yeah.
And he was a guy, he loved to drink. Drinking was his thing. Now, not during this movie, because they said the studio was like, you can't hire him. He's drunk. We don't want him. And Richard Burton proved to Michael Radford, he's like, no, I really don't drink anymore. And everyone's like, no, that guy used to drink 4 bottles of vodka a day. There's no way he's not drinking anymore. I guess he really wasn't. And he was very nice to work with. Everyone said, "Oh, he's a pain in the ass. He's a drunk." And he's like, everyone said he was amazing to work with. He was a nice guy, but he was also, in his declining years, because when you do 4 bottles a day, that takes it out of you. I've done 1 bottle a day, not consistently. I just did 1 bottle once, and I felt like hammered shit for 3 days. So I can't imagine doing 3 or 4 bottles a day. And he also liked to smoke a carton of cigarettes a day too. So
All
he was
right.
a British guy from the 30s. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just what they did.
Well, Roger Deakins seemed to be like had a good time with them. Like I guess they gathered up the crew, and he like thanked the crew because I guess it was a really young crew, because that's probably like because you had to pay them less because they're younger.
Yeah.
But yeah, he said he really liked working with them, and then everyone was like kind of like anxious about like working with somebody who was such a like a veteran actor, and so like everybody was like scared that they're gonna do the wrong thing, because Richard Burton didn't want to let them down, being that they're so young, and they didn't want to let them down, being that they're so stupid and young.
Yeah.
But I guess everybody enjoyed their time. As much as they could. So.
Right.
And I guess all the special effects in the movie are in camera. So.
Which is nuts when they describe like doing the opening scene. It's like, yep, that's 2,000 extras, folks. There's no CG people in there.
But I mean, they still did special effects. It was just all in camera.
Yeah.
So I remember like the one when they have like so they have like an outside shot, and you kind of have like this projector off to the side of the Big Brother stuff. Like that one's all just like it's a matte painting on some glass, and then they're like projecting it onto glass, and it's like put in front of the camera at a 45-degree angle. So it looks like it's a big projector sitting in the scene, but it's actually not. So
yeah.
Which that's a classic special effect thing, but
yeah.
But yeah, they could. The thing was like, just green screen it out. Like we can do that. It's 1984. We have the technology. It's like, but we don't have the budget, so don't worry about that.
Well, my favorite was when the guy was given the propaganda speech at a similar gathering. Or no, this was later. And
I think that's the one where like they're doing the executions after he gives the speech. But yeah.
Okay. And they said what they did was they projected both of those, and the guy he basically mouthed his words and be in sync with what he had recorded earlier and said.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, that's cool. Like he's not actually like he's staying in sync with what he recorded earlier, but he's not actually speaking. It's like, oh, that's very simple and effective.
Well, it's the same thing like when they go into O'Brien's office and he pretends to turn the TV off, and it's like, well, that's what it looks like, but that's just film rolling. That's not actually that's not actually a TV going off.
No, they have TVs that big back then. I don't even think they have TVs that big now.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah, I don't know what that big. I don't know how big that wall was. Yeah, the telescreens are huge. I've always wanted them. I wanted to build like how people build like fake shelves for their wall TVs now. Yeah. I always wanted the big ing socks around my TV, but like I could ever talk the wife into like, hey, can I put this, carve this out of or plaster or whatever, and
like, I don't want to have to explain this to anybody, Nathan.
This is that world you live in that nobody wants, not even your own son wants to be in this world with you. So.
I guess we'll get into the movie, or we'll just get into the movie. Yeah, we'll talk about other things if we get to it. So we have Act 1. We got titles. It says who controls the past, controls the future. Who controls the present, controls the past. Complete with like a news jingle kind of thing going on here. Yep. I tried to do like a quick watch of, because on the DVD they have you can choose between the two different scores.
The Dominic Muldowney soundtrack and the Eurythmics soundtrack.
When I turned the Eurythmics one on, I didn't spot any difference while just kind of switching between chapters. So I don't know where that specifically comes in. It sounded all the same to me when I looked at it. Because on the standard soundtrack, it's a blend. There's still Eurythmic stuff in there. Yes. But also
slowed down and
yeah.
Which
actually, the Eurythmic stuff is probably more present if you watch the trailer, because they have the song they made for the movie called Sex Crimes.
The worst trailer ever. For the movie. It's the weirdest. But see, this was again, you got to remember this was funded by Virgin Atlantic,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, the Eurythmics, I think, was one of their biggest acts.
Okay.
And so the soundtrack, they're like, no, this is your soundtrack. And Michael Radford was like, no, I had a guy like compose like a Soviet style soundtrack, like, because all that martial music, like that dun 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 and all that, and the Oceana, Tis for Thee, is like that was all composed by that guy, because this guy wanted to recreate like the look of like the Soviet Union during the terror, in the 30s or whatever. And they're like, yeah, we want some Eurythmics in here, which sounds weird, but then when you just watch the movie and don't know that, it's like, oh no, this Eurythmic soundtrack's pretty cool in the movie.
It's kind
When
of
they
what.
slow it down and mix it around, it's like, oh, this is neat.
Well, when you call this sci-fi, I feel like the Eurythmic stuff actually aids that.
Yes.
Is that there's something in there that seems kind of like otherworldly and futuristic, whereas the world you see is kind of just, oh look, it's a bombed out husk with a television screen. It's
Yeah.
like yeah, we open on people. Yeah, it's a crowd of people. They're usually in like blue coveralls or some slightly different color coveralls, but I'm not sure what that distinguishes necessarily.
The outer party member is which is what Winston is. So there's 3 tiers in this society. There's the inner party member, which those are the elites. That's the 1% in today's parlance. Then there's the outer party member. Those people are somewhat, and the inner party member wears like black or really dark blue uniforms. And that's inner party. So actually, Richard Burton had his suit made by this people that make Savile Row suits, but he said it's got to be a boiler suit, but I want it made out of like the finest material. So that distinguished him as an inner party member.
Okay.
And then outer party are like your functionaries, like they're semi-educated. They can usually read and write, but they're also policed very closely by the state. And then you have everyone else, which is the proles or the proletariat, which they kind of function as just like I actually don't know what their role is in the society, but they're like the garbage men. They're drunk, they're just kind of wild and free. They're not like controlled like the outer party or inner party members are. They're watched. They certainly can't like foment revolt against the government, but they're also just
they're
sort of
they're fodder. They're the people you send to a war that lasts forever or doesn't exist.
Yeah, so that's who that's the different unit. But the faded blue kind of worn uniforms, that's the outer party. That's like Winston.
Let's see here. There's they're watching a video screen. There's images and a voiceover talking about peace and harmony and Oceania. We get war footage and propaganda. Here's a line. They say the dark murdering armies of Eurasia. People in the crowd make a cross arm gesture, which is on the cover here.
Yeah.
But then also, I don't know what it means. This guy's just a gesture or whatever.
Well, it's the 2 B's. It's Big Brother. B.
Oh,
B.
okay.
Because whenever they see him, they kind of like go like that.
Oh, okay.
It's just people that have just been beaten since childhood. They don't have anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the
nation of sour alcoholics being terrorized by their government.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of like the thing that kind of gets lost in the visual production of 1984. The genius thing about the book, which I guess is many, is that it's mostly its inner monologue.
Yeah.
Which is genius because like you realize that like, oh yeah, because people can't fucking say anything they want, but they can think anything they want.
Yeah.
So far as their outer self doesn't betray their inner self.
Yeah. Which is, I'm gonna introduce my probably my biggest critique of the movie. We'll probably revisit this a few times, but this is one of those movies where it's like it's an awesome vision of a book that you have to read before you watch this movie.
Yeah.
Because this movie doesn't explain the world it exists in. It does visually.
Yeah.
But you really don't know what's going on and why and who's doing it. It's like if you just cold watch this, you'd be like, oh, I get it. They're like being watched all the time, and they can't say certain things, but why? Who's doing it? What's it for? And what, and there's not, they do some internal dialogue here, and some, like reading from his diary type stuff,
Yeah.
but it's not nearly as comprehensive as the book. Like,
Yeah.
you don't even realize where the hell you are in the movie until later. It's like, well, you're somewhere in the UK because everyone has a British accent, but it's like, other than that, it's like, what's going on? Why is everyone sad and drunk?
But yeah,
why are they
like, yeah.
speaking this weird language?
Yeah, but like that's how, like, this first scene can be interpreted different ways. If you don't know the book and you just watch this, it's like you think like, I don't know, oh, these people are like Nazis. They get really up to for propaganda.
Yeah.
And then if you read the book, it's like, oh, these people are completely in survival mechanism mode. They don't believe anything they're saying or doing. They just know they need to say and do it.
Yeah, this is compulsory participation in it, where their reactions are being watched.
Yeah.
They're putting on a play.
Yes.
Yeah. Which makes it really, that's why people look so strange, because the one guy's like, like his tongue's out of his mouth. He's like almost speaking in
It's
tongues,
like a
this
Pentecostal
is
church or whatever.
Yeah. What the hell is this? But if you hadn't read the book, you would just be kind of weirded out. Like, okay.
They chant the name Goldstein, which I guess, like, I was falling asleep listening to the book, so I probably missed all the Goldstein stuff. Essentially, it's a guy who's supposed to be running the revolution in the background, or resistance.
He's essentially the Noam Chomsky of this universe.
But then they have just like Goldstein on the screen, like talking about all the things about like what's bad with the party, and it's like, well, that all seems reasonable. Why would they ever show that to their party members? And then you realize, oh, that's another ruse. If you control the resistance and the government, then like, who knows what can't you control?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
But also, I mean, here at the beginning, if you don't know anything, it just seems like, okay, this is the opposition, like this resistance, which is actually like somehow more damning than like there's another country that wants to kill us. Like that's amorphous. They can't believe that. But like a guy with ideas, like, oh man,
and he's one of us. He's like, he's here. He'll be waiting for you in your, flat.
But yeah, they make sure to like yell and scream at him and yell Goldstein, and then the film ends on an inksock flag, and then we cut to like Big Brother watching them. So
yeah.
Then we get credits start to roll over the crowd. Like, so this is like the in-movie credits, not credits on the propaganda screens.
Yeah.
And I had to put like I had to put first had to put subtitles on because I didn't know what name they were saying. It's like, oh, it's Goldstein, and then also for here, as I didn't know they were chanting B. I didn't know what the hell they were chanting. It's like, oh, B, okay, so it's BB for Big Brother. So presumably, who knows,
No, it is. That goes in with the whole newspeak where you just carve down language.
Yeah.
Why say Big Brother? Just say BB. Which newspeak is an interesting dialectical extension of George Orwell's like essays on writing, because his belief about writing is no flourishes. Say what you can as simply as possible, and if you can even cut more out of that, do that.
Yeah.
Because your writing should only be driven by ideas and reflecting those ideas, not in florid language. And so like the concept of newspeak is like, oh, this guy like already does this in his writing. So it's like, oh, okay. So but for him it's like efficiency of thought and not being
so George Orwell is represented in this movie as the guy who wants like the dictionary to be even smaller to make his language even more efficient.
Yeah, Hemingway had some version of that too, where it's like you've got to be concise. You'll lose the audience. You've got to pound as many ideas as you can in the smallest paragraph possible. And if you just let it get too fat, people will just be chewing fat and they'll just walk away. They won't want to read it.
Yeah.
People can, because it's like you see the story, you read the story, you create the story in your mind. But if it's too wordy and dense, then people just start to drift away. And so there's all that.
Yeah, it all depends on like the kind of imagery you put in people's heads.
Yeah,
because I'd say like something like Lonesome Dove is kind of dense, but like the imageries it puts in your head is amazing and awful all at the same time.
Well, Lonesome Dove, like if like say if you've never if people like us, like, well, we're in America, but we don't hang out in the West. Or more importantly, like if you're someone who is not from America or North America or anywhere and never seen things like that, Lonesome Dove's like an awesome like painting a picture in your mind of like, oh, this is what the American West was like in the 1870s. Like this is cool. Whereas the world of 1984 is just some drab balkanized concrete hellhole. So you don't really need to like, oh, and the Big Brother, his eyes were, he was, his lips were turned up as mischievous or whatever. Like that would have no place in this world.
What was the flourishy language I love? I can't remember. It's actually from a recent author, but it's something talking about like the moon looked like a clipped thumbnail in cotton.
That's strong and strange. It makes me think of necessary but unsightly bodily chores and art at the same time. That's weird. Language is magic.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, what you're saying here is like, well, it seems like what you're saying, Orwell is saying, is that like, hey, you're writing a fucking book, not a poetry session. No one's gonna read fucking 8 hours of poetry. Like, get to the point.
Yeah.
You can write your fucking poetry book, but that's gonna be like a 2-page poem.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be 100 of them. So. But then again, look at Shakespeare. That's all lofty poetic language, and look how awesome that is. So.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just in what you believe.
Yeah.
Orwell was like just a very focused political writer with kind of a cautionary theme. Because his two most famous works, Animal Farm in 1984, are just about the dangers of government, just excess and getting out of control. And people like believing in something and then other people manipulating that belief and making it into something awful. And the weird thing about Orwell is he's actually, and I'm going to say this, but understand it was at a different time and a place. He was actually a socialist, like in real life, like politically, he was a socialist. Now, when I say that, he was a socialist of the like 1930s, post World War II era, where it's like we should help people, not a socialist like Stalin, where it's like. But the reason he made 1984 and he wrote it, it was like, no, this was like a socialist government, but this is what happens when it gets out of control. It's kind of a warning shot to his fellow socialists, like, don't let it get out of control, guys. This is where it could go. So it was sort of interesting how he like took aim at his own beliefs, but really anything could become Oceana and Ingsoc, because whatever it was meant to be, it just ended up being a totalitarian police state. So it wouldn't matter if they were fascists before, they were communists, or they were whatever. It's like it all ends up in like, oh, once the dream dies and the corruption takes hold, it just becomes a police state.
Yeah. So it self-perpetuates.
Yeah.
Because that's why you have like Big Brother. Because like, who is Big Brother? What's he represent? It's like, I don't know. What do you think he represents?
What does he mean to you? And be careful how you answer that question.
It's like a Stalin who never dies, because he all lives in your mind. We cut to never-ending cubicles. We stop at Winston Smith's cubicle, played by John Hurt. There's like this TV screen on his desk with a Big Brother image. There's some like overlaying text on the Big Brother says, "Old thinkers unbelly feel ingsoc, think in newspeak. If you have a problem, consult 10th newspeak dictionary."
Yeah.
And then Winston's like inputting numbers with like a freestanding phone dial, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I sort of like that.
I want a modern version of that, or just way too much effort to input something. And then Winston is editing a newspaper like so it better fits like what the party wants. Which here is he because like later on he's editing older newspapers, but here I think it reads 1984, so he's editing like a current newspaper.
Yeah.
Okay, because this is his big this is a big thing about like what's I can't remember what's about. It's basically it's like, hey, we don't have any chocolate, and then he shifts things around to make it look like, hey, chocolate rations are going to be up by like 0.25% or something like that.
Yeah, see, Winston, his job is he's basically a information broker at the Ministry of Truth. So, which is we would call like a ministry of propaganda or something. But yeah, there's different ministries here. There's the ministries of truth, the ministry of peace, the ministry of plenty, and the ministry of love. And the dark one is the ministry of love, because that's where you just get tortured for political uh, things. But Winston works at the ministry of truth. So his like the chocolate ration being reduced, he like and I'm assuming he's receiving assignments because things come to his desk through these tubes, like you
Yeah.
put your money in a bank. So he's like, I somehow he's getting like the message like this guy is an unperson now, so we need to delete his picture and put a new person in that then say this guy won the chess match and then he died on the Malabar front or whatever, he's fighting bravely against Eurasia. And then like the chocolate ration had to be reduced, but then they said not, it was reduced to a certain number, and then later on it became like, oh, the chocolate ration's been increased to that number because the fulfillment of the fourth 9-year plan or whatever. It's all that Soviet speak kind of stuff they were talking about. But yeah, so he's basically like just modifying the old copies of newspapers that the Ministry of Truth would put out. But if I guess if anyone wanted to go back in the stacks, all they would find were this like, no, this guy never existed. Which, like again, the thing at the beginning of the movie, he who controls the future controls the past. It's like, yeah, we're just deleting history as we go.
Yeah. Well, because you never see anybody reading a newspaper.
No,
because all the information is being broadcast on the television constantly, nonstop. So,
well, I mean, and one of the things too, it's like it's briefly touched upon in the book is all the stuff that's made in the Ministry of Truth, because like where Julia works in something called pornosec, where they just make pornographic literature for people to read. But most of this stuff is made by the outer party for the outer party, because most proles can't read. They're just an illiterate subgroup. So this is all like these people are all eating their own tail essentially. They're making stuff for each other. The war the states fight go on forever. The truth never comes out, and this is kind of his job. It's just to plot along through this.
We cut to Winston walks home in a dirty London, because it is London in the book, so it's London here.
Yeah. By the way, he's walking home. Most of these sets are the same place that Full Metal Jacket, the Vietnam scene, was filmed in years later. So it's like, and then when you know that, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like, hey, this looks a lot like the end of Full Metal Jacket. It's like, because it was.
Yeah, it is.
Which I forget, it was just like some industrial part of town. It was like some gas factory or something that had just been dilapidated and left
Yeah,
alone.
it was called like the gas works. It basically died off in the 20s.
Yeah.
But it was just this huge industrial area that had never been rebuilt.
So yeah, when Winston's walking home, there's like a confession on a TV from a trader, which I guess if you know anything about 1984, you know this is probably not true. This is a forced confession. But I guess it'll be a bookend here. Winston gets home. He has a cigarette, but it falls apart, so he's all bummed out. So he puts a like
he says bugger, which
yeah.
I guess that means something really vulgar in British English.
Oh,
by the way, his apartment block, the famous Battersea Power Station from the Pink Floyd album, was the exterior for that. They didn't shoot the stacks though; it was just the brick facade on the outside.
Okay. Which I guess is poignant because that's literally the place where they have a brick in the wall.
Yes. Oh yeah.
But it's not just another brick in the wall; it's a special brick in the wall. There's like I think there's a voiceover from Winston about thought crime and it being death.
Yeah.
And we get intercut video footage of like Winston being watched, so it's kind of like this, the cut from film to something that looks like videotape rather than film. It's like, and it's always from the perspective of the TVs. So it's like, okay, so these aren't just TVs; they're also video cameras, and you can't turn them off.
Yeah.
Um,
Telescreens.
Winston undoes a brick in the wall, so he keeps I wrote presumably illegal diary, or at least the thoughts he has are illegal, not necessarily the diary. I'm not sure.
Pretty much anything that would be, what do they call that? In Newspeak, it's called own life. Anything that's not like done for the benefit of the party or to help people monitor you and you to in turn monitor them would be a crime.
Yeah.
Anything the state decides is a crime is a crime. So yeah.
But
there's specific things too that go on.
But yeah, he fills out his diary like while standing like completely off to the side of the screen, so presumably so it can't see him write stuff down. But who knows? But yeah, I mean, like that television screen like takes up basically like a whole wall, so. And an apartment that's basically like a one-room apartment.
Yeah, it's a terrible place to live.
We cut to a dream sequence where Winston like walks out into like a green hillside, and then we see a boy running through rubble, which this is presumably Winston as a kid, and it is.
Yeah.
A lot of this the kid running through rubble stuff. A lot of that's the stuff that's it from Full Metal Jacket, that gasworks thing. Or I guess all the rubble's that same place, right? Not just the children. Okay.
It's called the Beckton Gas Works. It operated from 1870 to 1976. It was designed for coal gasification. So they took coal and incinerated it and extracted the coke and slag from it. So yeah, that must have been a nice place to hang out.
Yeah. It's like we just built it with asbestos and infused with coal slag.
Oh yeah.
Hey, why are you guys filming around here? That's kind of dangerous. Like, well, nobody put up any signs, so
it's free. Don't have to pay anyone to shoot here.
Winston wakes up coughing into like a siren, which I wasn't sure what this was, but this is like, I guess, what he wakes up to every morning.
Yep. Wake up.
It's exercise time. He basically got his own Peloton instructor. Although
very grim, austere British Peloton lady.
Yeah, which I mean, all this is like verbatim in the book, where it's like, I'm 39, I've had 4 children, I can bend over and touch my toes. What's the problem with you? Oh, it's weird where Winston's like bending over to touch his toes because he has like his arms out at like a 90-degree angle. It's like, that's the worst way to touch your toes. Like, dude, put your arms out as far as you can. But yeah, he gets admonished by the instructor for like not touching his toes, because I think also Winston's supposed to be 39 in the book.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how old John Hurt is here, because
John Hurt is anywhere from 25 to 150 at any given time in his life. So really hard to tell.
Then we got to Winston talks with Parsons for a moment. He's like lives in the same block that he does. Like, here's Parsons happy about the chocolate rations are going up. But, Winston knows that's like, hey, that's my lie.
Hey, that's my thing. You can't take that.
Which I don't know if he's proud of that. It's like, cool, my lie's getting around. Or if he's like, oh no, like I gave false hope once more.
Well, he hates in the book. He hates
Parsons. Okay.
He's like, Parsons is everything I hate about a party member.
Oh yeah, he
believes everything. He says things. He's always, you can't trust him. He tries to be friendly, and you can't trust him. It's
Yeah, here he's not. Yeah, here he's kind of presented as an idiot. Like, if you're somebody who believes everything you're told, yeah, of course Parsons is going to exist. And then when he gets punished for like basically doing what he's told, it's like extra sad. It's like, well, he doesn't know any better. He doesn't think for himself because he's not supposed to. Here's where we forgot like razor blades are low. I think Winston says he's been using one for like the last like what does he say? Like days or weeks? I can't remember.
Weeks,
Okay.
which would be horrible if you shaved every day.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like, well, I do that, but it's like I shave once a week if you're
Yeah.
lucky. When you have to shave every day, it's like, oh, that would be like dragging like using a spatula to shave, especially those kind of razors.
um. Well, I saw it's funny here because they're like waiting for an elevator, and then eventually they're like, "Oh, I guess the elevator doesn't work," and they just walk downstairs.
Yeah.
But they don't point it out. Like nobody says like you just have to like realize that. Like, wait, why did they sit there and wait for the elevator, then walk down the stairs? It's like, oh, because it doesn't work, and then they can't point it out because that would be like against the government for not building a good elevator. So, then we cut to the slop line. There's lots of gin going around, so
Oh yeah.
they got some alcohol for the people. Although here it's like,
Which is weird because gin would actually is very expensive to make. There's a lot of components to it.
oh, okay.
But if you just had Victory vodka, it'd be too on the nose of Soviet things. So, probably why he put that in the book.
I don't know. Maybe some sort of like what crops England has to make gin is more plentiful or something like that.
Well, no, in the book, Winston says it has like a dull kerosene taste, so it might just be they're calling it gin.
Yeah.
Because that's something people would know, but it's just vodka. It's some kind of corn whiskey.
Well, something here that there's I can't remember this. It's Syme here. He so Winston doesn't get gin, but Syme gets like double rations and then like shares it with Winston, which I don't know if it's like, oh, he owes him or if that's like what the deal's going on here. I don't know.
Yeah, the economy of the world of 1984, much like Star Trek, doesn't make any sense to me. But Simon,
but I know which one I want to live in.
yeah. There's one that's cool. You do have a private life in Star Trek. Now, Simon, the book is a little bigger character, like because he's like a serious intellectual, but he's like an expert in newspeak.
Yeah.
And so that's what he does at the Ministry of Truth. So he might be of a higher rank or something. I know he really hates Parsons.
Okay.
Like they actually have a conversation. Like he's like, Winston. I mean, nobody has a conversation about anything in 1984.
No.
But Winston can tell, like when Parsons comes and sits there next to him, Simon can tell by the look on his face. He can't hide his disgust and revolt, but he doesn't, vocalize it. But he just gives long talks about newspeak, and which Winston likes because he considers Simon a friend, even though he doesn't know anything about it. It's just the sad detachment of people in this world is so
well, it's
amazing.
like he has like this dark poetry about, because like there's the line I wrote that he says, it's like, it's a beautiful thing, the destruction of words.
Yep.
It's like, what a great awful thing to say. Yeah, here we got the first mention of the proles. Which is probably just I probably just learned that from Patton Oswalt comedy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So he's talking about like strangling a prole or something like that. And what's the other one? Double plus good cock or something like that was some other phrase in a Patton Oswalt album. Everyone's talking about like, have you seen The Hanging? And then like apparently nobody has, but like they just want to bring it up. We get kind of a refocus of Julia. She's been popping up here and there. This is played by Susanna Hamilton, which is like, I guess I didn't look up the other stuff she did. This is the only thing I recognize her from. So,
yeah, I don't. I think she did a lot of like BBC stuff.
Yeah.
Because I did a quick pass and I didn't. I know she was in Out of Africa, which is that Robert Redford movie, like a year after this.
Okay.
But she wasn't like, she was like, I think she was somebody's love interest. Like she was like a second character.
And then we cut to Winston's like writing his diary, and we get kind of shots of what he's thinking about, or his diary, because he's like, there's like a sex worker caked in makeup, and like the first time you see her, she's like young, and then basically progressively she just becomes like kind of old with like really bad makeup and torn clothes, and it's like it just becomes sadder and sadder and sadder.
Yeah.
She's also like full of bruises. So,
Yeah. Yeah. People live horrible. The proles live horrible lives.
oh, okay, that's okay. She's supposed to be a pro. Okay, I guess that makes sense. Because I thought here I was like, is this supposed to be illegal or what? I don't know.
Oh, it's illegal, but yeah.
I cut back to the work cubicle. Winston's looking at like a recently deceased soldier to replace an article of like a. Oh, they have some. Oh, this is where they have like somebody won a chess tournament, but they don't like that person anymore, so they go find like the death certificates of people who've died in the war and decide to replace them with that because then they can't like nobody can't like do any background research on it. Like, well, they're dead, so that's the end of that. So,
Yeah.
and they won the chess tournament, and they're war heroes. There you go. Oh, he also has like a little like furnace next to his desk so he can just burn the previous information and things like that.
The memory hole, that's called. Doesn't come up in the movie, but it's in the book. They call it the memory hole.
It's
If you wrote things down, it was like, oh, you better get rid of it. That could be used against you
yeah,
later.
yeah. That's why I was like, yeah. That's what I was wondering. Like, is like Winston's diary like especially egregious a thing, or is it just out of safeguard? You just don't ever write or read anything.
Well, like I said, kind of both. It creates something in Newspeak called Own Life, and then it creates, because if anyone sat and looked around the world and thought about it for 5 seconds, they'd be like, well, this really sucks. But what's really sad is there's like no escaping this world. Like there's
Yeah.
no like, oh, if you get over the fence, you're in South Korea or something. It's like, no, you don't know anything about what's going on. You don't know.
No.
You don't even know how you got there. That's how
Yeah,
complete it
yeah.
is.
You don't see the outside world, and what you do see of it, is propaganda. So it's like you're as clueless as the people that this government wields its fist over.
Because you got to realize like this could just be happening on like the British Isles and the rest of the world's normal. Like you
Yeah.
wouldn't know. It's like that's how little these people just live entirely in their own heads, which is like, really sad.
We cut to nighttime. Winston like kind of looks into like at like a bar or something, which I'm guessing is full of proles or something, which I guess he's might be offended by and leaves or whatever. Also, when he leaves, there's like a couple of cops walk out of there, but so I don't know if they're like getting drunk or they're just like making sure everybody's in line.
Yeah, I didn't see any real outer party members in there. Those all looked like a prole bar. This is what they call it.
But yeah, I mean, it's the only other get together in the movie because the only other time they get together is for propaganda time. So
Yeah.
So he wanders off into the dirty city. And winds up at like a shop or something. Like it's just like a junk broker or whatever. But this guy sold him the notebook. Winston looks at a bunch of junk. Some things mean something to him, but mostly it just looks like it's just leftovers from the war when he was a child. So, I don't necessarily know, but yeah. He pays $4 for a glass ball with like a piece of coral in it or something. He's really infatuated by that. Then the guy like takes him upstairs to look at some other things. He says his woman died, like not his wife, his woman.
Yeah.
Which isn't that something in the book? Isn't like doesn't Winston like have like an appointed wife and then he's like ends up sleeping with Julia, or is that something different?
Yeah, he had like the at some point the party did assign him a wife, but they didn't like each other.
Oh, okay.
And so they just kind of went their own ways. But I didn't exactly because I know he kind of just doesn't like women. Like he's kind of a misogynist in a way.
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
book, it's more clear. It's like I hate them women. I can't stand the stink of them. He like has these thoughts in his head.
I mean, express some here, so
Yeah.
also the way he is, where it's like she even utters the words "I love you" and he just goes "I want you." Like that's him hitting on a woman. It's like, but yeah, so yeah, it takes him upstairs to like this room that apparently was where his wife lived or they lived together. He's trying to sell the furniture. He says like it's a beautiful thing if you can get the bugs out of it, which
Yeah.
I'm not sure what bugs they meant by this time. I guess bed bugs have been around forever, but like
Oh yeah.
but bed bugs now is like don't go near it. Like, just set it on fire.
Well, yeah.
There's no reclaiming it. um, Winston recognizes a drawing on the wall and like has like a memory from childhood, but he just doesn't know. He doesn't know. He can't. He can't complete the memory. He just knows a part of it. Um, so Winston leaves the store and he crosses path with Julia, where she's putting up like propaganda posters at like midnight or something.
Yeah.
Um, um, and then yeah, I think Winston's back at home and he's like has trouble dealing with his feelings of Julia, and he like talks about killing her before she like denounces him. So this is where it's like kind of his hatred of women kind of comes in. And then he has visions of his dead mother covered in rats, which is that must have been fun to film.
Well, yeah, I remember the guy was talking about when they brought the original rats in.
Yeah, they're like
They were
lab
like
mice.
white lab rats,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, we need the dirty sewer rats. Well, I guess they just went and found some, and like just threw them on this actress. Of course, they're eating each other and everything. It's like, this is nice.
So that would be in Act 1. So we got Act 2. Winston loads up his rusty razor, and then a helicopter flies by this window, which I don't know what the reference is, but this kind of looks like the MASH helicopters.
Yeah, that's kind of the era of technology they're still in.
um,
So, as a point of reference, which is, there were a few essays written, but not much. But the world of 1984 is essentially how it came to be this way, as far, and even the people in, Oceania Airstrip 1 specifically, which would be the UK, don't exactly know this history. But imagine if World War II never ended and all sides just started using nuclear weapons again, but not the big hydrogen bombs, but just the like Hiroshima style nuclear weapons. Because when he talks about the bombings and stuff that went on when he was a kid, that's what they're talking about.
Okay.
Was that's why the world's is kind of a mess. It's, but they don't really say that in the book. But yeah, understand, like, you're basically you're in 1984. There is some high technology, but essentially the world these people operate in is frozen in like the 1950s. Because this was, again, like Michael, the director of photography said, it's like, yeah, this is a world of the future imagined by a guy in the 40s. So they really tried to go for that look. I mean, what would the world look like if essentially World War II never ended and it never really evolved, except we have some, electronics and stuff that are good for spying on people. But as far as everyone's daily lives go, yeah, that's why they didn't have like a Black Hawk helicopter, which did exist at that time. But yeah, they were just flying around in this weird little.
So something the production could afford.
Yeah,
the skeleton helicopters.
Just something that looked shitty. It was crappy.
Yeah, well, if you look closely at the helicopters, it basically looks like they put up like garbage bags on the inside of the helicopters.
I didn't understand. It's like, are they doing that for a lighting thing or?
No, I think it just looked more menacing. That there was just there's
out.
Yeah, there's no life and you couldn't see a pilot. There's just something with a dangerous blade on it just hovering around. It might as well just be a drone because you can't see somebody flying it.
Yeah, in the book, what does Winston say? Like, the dragonfly was watching outside my window for a little bit. And
okay.
Because there's a whole bunch of dialogue in the book about how you had to have this set look on your face. Because I think there was actually something called face crime. Like, if you looked sad, it was like, oh no, they'd vector in on you. So you always had to look like optimistic in a way.
Don't have resting bitch face in 1984.
No.
Winston is out on a walkabout and he crosses Julia and she has a broken arm, who then like falls in front of him. He asks if she's all right and she says like that she is, and they part ways. Then we cut to the cubicle and we find out like Julia passed him a note and it says "I love you" on it, and on the back it says Victory Square, and so of course he burns it, but his thoughts are on his mind now. Yeah, here's where like we learn that Julia apparently works in the porno section, which I guess I don't exactly know what that means, but you did explain it there.
Yeah, but they basically there are books because she hurt her arm working on a drum printer. So basically, these books just had random. It's kind of like wacky ad libs,
Yeah.
but they're filling in the ad libs. So it's like, yeah, just like a drum printer of books that just randomly print out pornographic literature, not images or whatever, but just like stories of,
Yeah.
dirty limericks, I guess, or whatever. But yeah, she got her arm wrapped around one of those trying to fix it,
Huh.
hurt herself. And I don't think it was moving at full blast because it just would have flattened her like a pancake. But yeah,
Then we cut to Winston's doing some plumbing at the Parsons house, and then we have the creepy Parsons kids who's like saying that Winston is a thought criminal, which is more brought up in the book because like children are dangerous in 1984
yeah,
the book because they're infatuated by the propaganda. It's like, oh, cool, and also it's power because
yeah.
like
They have, they're like the evil kid in the Twilight Zone
yeah,
that could make
exactly.
anything happen. Oh, it's good that you done that. It's like, oh yeah, these kids are awful.
Because like, I don't know, you don't see any kids being hanged for thought crime, but any kid can accuse their parents of thought crime, and they might hang them. Like, yeah, that'll teach my parents.
Imagine what a nightmare that is, because we've all been mad at our parents at one time or another. It's like, I'm dropping a dime on dad. He is a thought criminal because he, yelled at me or something.
Oh, there's a funny thing in I don't you know Ted the movie, the talking teddy bear.
Yes, yeah, the vulgar teddy bear, yeah.
So now they have a TV show, which is weird. It's basically just a live action version of Family Guy,
Okay.
and it takes place. It's like a prequel technically, so it takes place in the '90s. So they basically found an excuse to make a '90s TV show. um, it's mostly stupid, but occasionally they have some genius things. There's this one part where like it's John and Teddy are like playing street hockey, and like his parents come home and like they're kind of like seemingly fighting because they just came back from a therapy session that they never wanted to go to. And so John's talking to Ted and he's like I Ted, I can't help but think that maybe this is my fault. What do you think? He's like, well, that's a hard problem to answer, John. And then he's just out of nowhere, he goes, have you ever thought about hurting yourself to teach him a lesson? And then he goes, that's a great idea, Ted. That way I can control the pain.
God.
So it's like very out of nowhere nonsense like that. And then otherwise it's basically just Family Guy. Like they learn, in Family Guy where they have like the establishing shot where they're at the house and they have that little do 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 do.
Yeah.
They have the exact same tune for this show. So, yeah, sometimes it's like Seth MacFarlane seems to be creatively bankrupt, but then it's like, hey, I mean, look, he can do he does Orville. That's great. So he's multi-talented. So he's just getting people jobs. Like, what do you? So but yeah, this is like, but they don't really get into like how dangerous kids are here, except for later on when it's see what happens to Parsons. But we cut to there's like some celebration of a war victory that we don't know whether it's real or not. Prisoners are being executed to cheers. This is where like have the guy doing the he's giving the speech and they have the projectors projecting on the side, but they all have to do it live. And also like all the execution scenes are like pretty nasty looking, which I guess they all should be. There's one where it's like a guy just comes with a machine gun and just like shoots everybody in like the stomach and knees. And like
Yeah.
you just see like viscera fly out. It's like, oh, that's that's like it's like in some technicality like, well, that's a war crime, but it's like, who cares in this world?
Yeah, because all that stuff's kind of presented in like a weird like sepia tone too.
Yeah.
So it kind of it's not it's shocking, but it's not like blood and guts like full color shocking.
No.
But it seems like in the world of the party they can't shoot in color, so everything's in sepia.
I mean, sepia tone is just a different form of black and white. So.
Yeah.
It's just
I mean, it's cool
monochrome.
in the show because it just gets it lets you know you're in television world.
Also, it's kind of like, hey, look, even the film is rusting
Yeah.
and falling apart.
This world sucks.
But yeah, like, but there's people cheering to the execution, but it seems like this is what they have to do, not what they want to do.
There's people like bringing their children. It's
Yeah.
like they just bring the kids out to see people shot. Because the one guy's executing people like this, like he's putting the gun up to their head and then turning his head away and just walking down the line and doing that. And there's also a guy like standing behind there. It's like, well, that's not good, like safety. You shouldn't like stand in the blast of that. But
And then we have Julia like sneaks behind Winston and like asks him out somewhere, and he agrees. But they're not looking at each other. He's just kind of like they need to keep up appearances. So
yeah.
she gives him a note to remember and then destroy because that's how things work in this universe. Which that'd be terrible for me. Like as soon as I destroy,
I have to break out the notes app on my phone. Like I guess me and the NSA are going to remember to get bread.
Yeah, because as soon as I burn that note, I'd be like, "Wait, what the fuck am I doing?"
Yeah, where am I? What's my name?
Because my imagination would have taken over and butted out that information already.
The secret meeting place is. What if dragons were real?
Then we cut to Winston's at either a working or abandoned train station, but apparently it's working because the next shot they're on a train. So,
the worst train ever.
He talks to some guy who, like, weirdly comes up to him. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Like he wants to tell on him or something. At first, I thought this like, is this all part of the resistance or something? But no. He gives him some lie about like I wanted to join a hiking group. Then he's kind of like bummed out about that. It's like I don't.
I'm catching up with my hiking group. Like, oh, I thought you were here to commit a thought crime. Bummer.
Then we cut to the creepy train that's just like old people and singing children.
Yeah, the worst Boy Scouts ever.
And then Winston meets Julia in the woods, where it's like it's a green and not dreary place, because so it's like why doesn't anybody live out here? Something.
I forget where that is. They named it. It's like a famous place in England that actually looks that way. Like it's known. Like it's the only place in the country that looks like that.
Yeah. It kind of looks like a Windows like screensaver. Well, not screensaver, but like the Windows startup screen.
Desktop.
Yeah, desktop. Yeah, but less so. It's still British, so it's still got to be less impressive and almost black and white. But it looks better than anything in the movie. We'll also come back here often because this is also predestined by one of Winston's dreams. Where he walks through there's a corridor with a 101 door at the end of it, and he walks to it, and this place appears. That happens like 800 times in this movie. So, but here it's for real, maybe.
This is when the Eurythmics soundtrack really kicks in. It does take on that surreal quality you were talking about earlier.
This is where they start to strangle you with cassette tape. Winston Winston's talking with Julia. Winston says like he hates virtue and wants everyone corrupt. Julia claims to be corrupt to the core, which is all very weird dialogue, and I don't know if they intend any of it. We're just like, hey, let's just say awful things to each other because we're free right now.
I could never say this aloud, or I'd be one of the people being executed.
Which I don't. Yeah, I don't necessarily. I know what happens, but I guess I don't. I almost while watching this movie, I'm expecting her to be like a part of the resistance or whatever, rather than it is just like she's asking Winston out on a date, which is. So she strips and they have sex, in the woods. He wants to have sex next to the green hill, but she's like, we're too visible from here, so
yeah, don't be a pervert.
Go back in the woods. So
and by the way, interesting like movie production note, not to body shame people because I think it actually works. These actually do look like a couple POW camp people having sex. Like
Yeah,
everyone looks terrible. I think
yeah.
that's on purpose. Because it's just like there's nothing romantic or kind about this. This is like a desperate act of two people that are like, we're basically dead at this point, so we might as well enjoy it.
And you got the classic British teeth, so everyone's teeth looks bad,
Yeah.
which I don't know if that's naturally or, I mean, later on it's on purpose with like makeup and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
um,
No, I've come to understand by working with a lot of foreigners over the years that like American dentistry is a unique and amazing thing that almost doesn't happen anywhere else in the world because everywhere else in the world your government provides your medical care. So it's like dentistry. No, we're going bang. We can't even defend our country because we're doing grandma's knee surgery here. We can't do dentistry.
um, then we cut to another Winston dream sequences where again they're walking the 101 corridor. Here, O'Brien, who we haven't met yet. Well, we've seen him, but we haven't met him yet. Is walking alongside of him.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if this is something where like you're supposed to pick up on a second viewing or something. But maybe I don't know. there's recursive logic. Isn't that amazing? Like, I don't know. I'm never gonna watch this more than once, dude.
I watched this movie like 100 times and read the book a similar amount. So for me, it's like, yeah, of course, it's just foreshadowing, but I already read the book before I watched the movie,
Yeah.
so it's like this doesn't surprise me.
I'm not saying like it's a bad movie. I'm just saying like it's such a dreary movie. It's like, yeah, this is a one and done for me.
Well, see, this led like, let me see this. I'll just talk about the book and movie as one thing here for a second. Is this led me into a whole universe of like, yeah, I didn't. This was depressing, you know. Even as a kid, I was like, oh, hold on a second. What's I gotta say? This was like, yeah, this is really depressing, but it's like, you know, what leads to this? Like, this is unimaginable. Where did this like happen? And then it's like, oh, you find out what's this based on, and then you start reading Solzhenitsyn, whose most famous book is he's a Russian author, is A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, which is a book about a guy sentenced to the gulags, and what his life is like there, and what it's like to live in you know, and this is during, of course, the Soviet terror, the Soviet purges. And it's like, oh, that's terrible. That's like 100-page book translated into English. Of course, I'm not reading this in Russian. I'm not that smart. But it's like, oh, this is how this stuff happened. This was like based on something real. Like, I mean, I don't know, the character wasn't real, but this stuff really happened to people. And then it's like, oh, then you really get into like totalitarian societies and how they form. And like I said, I'm like 12, 14 years old. I'm getting into this stuff. And then you're like, oh, Solzhenitsyn wrote other books, and then you get into the like the Red Wheel trilogy, which talks us all about collectivization in the Soviet period. And so you're reading like the equivalent of the Lord of the Rings, of people being tortured, imprisoned, and living lives of alcoholism and quiet misery. And then you're like, then you come back to 1984, and it's like, this is great because this didn't happen. Like, how miserable this looks. It's like, I've actually, you know, I've read Solzhenitsyn. It's like, oh, that was real. This is fake. I'm happier with it. I choose this misery over other misery. Now, a lot of people aren't going to go into that. And of course, as someone who loved the Cold War and just spent countless amounts of, if still to this day, reading books and learning about that period and stuff, it's like, oh, the world of 1984 is amazing to me. It's like, oh, this is what would have happened if like the Soviets had come out of World War II a lot stronger. Our society would actually resemble something more like 1984 than what it does today. And you know, it's equal. It's on one hand, it's horrifying, and on the other hand, it's instructive. It reminds you of like, because we were talking about earlier how everyone uses the propaganda of 1984 to blame their political adversaries. So, you know, like, yo, you're the totalitarianist. No, you're the totalitarianist. And you realize in America, this like virtually doesn't exist. And you're very safe from it here. I mean, unless you let things get, I mean, we're only one economic downturn away from that not being the case. But like, if I were a European or something, or lived in like a former Soviet state, it's like, oh, this would seem like very prescient. It's like, yep, yeah, we're going right back to this shit immediately. Like as Americans, we have there's no history of this for us. Like this is like, wow, this is all weird. But in other places in the world, even places in the Western world, like you're a lot closer to this than what you think. I mean, just one or two things could go wrong. In America, like a whole lot of things would have to go wrong for something like Ingsoc to become the political order of the day. Of course, we wouldn't call it that. We'd call it like Jesus good or something dumb because we like to do that. But that like
Jesus
that kind
watch.
yeah, that kind of transformation in America, like a lot of things would have to go wrong, including like half the population dying and crazy shit. Not so much in other parts of the world where it's like, no, they're right on the doorstep of this. Even places where they have democracy right now and they seem nice, it's like, no, this is lurking in the background. Like they could go to that. They have all those tools in the toolbox because a lot of those places don't actually have constitutions where it's like, no, this is the law. It's like, no, the law is like whatever crisis we're reacting to. So yeah, so that's why reading this as an American and then trying to put yourself in the mind of like of foreigners and people from different cultures that you're somewhat familiar with, it's like, oh, this is a lot more prescient there maybe than here. But yeah, so it is kind of fun how we bat around these ideas in the US, but it's like, oh, we're so far from this. I mean, some people think they're actually living like this right now.
Yeah.
Because they can't like say horrible things on Facebook or whatever. It's like, well, I might as well just put the telescreen in here and go have sleep with the proles or something. But
yeah, I can't scream my racial epithets on Facebook, and so they're holding me down by not letting me on their platform.
Yeah.
Now I have to go into the basement to paint my my hatred on a canvas.
Like the government's controlling me. Meanwhile, like you have like a house full of guns, a bank full of money, and the ability to. You can just go and drive around all night, and as long as you're not breaking the speed limit or drunk, no one cares. No one will bother you.
Yeah.
But some people act like it's like, oh, we're living in a totalitarian state. It's like, no, you're not. But yeah. But if you read about real functioning states that were very close to this. The closest you get to this in the real world would be like East Germany from like the end of World War II to about the 80s.
Yeah.
Like that is very close to this. They did a really good job of keeping their people pinned down. They didn't quite have this level of technology. And again, all you had to do was cross over a line and there was a normal world out there. They couldn't quite keep people hidden from that. But as far as like, the thought police, like the Stasi comes real close to. Well, you watch that movie, The Lives of Others.
Yeah.
I mean, that basically was what was going on. So, yeah.
Yeah. But they were there was impressive because they're efficient. So here the efficiency is magical because it doesn't seem like they could really achieve that in this movie. But this movie's kind of dreamlike in its own way. So I suppose it makes sense when you need the bad guy needs to be magical. So. And unfair, which actually probably the worst part. There's no fairness here.
No, there's no like if you do these things, you can have it. You can't be free of misery because you live in this hellhole. But you can what do you call that? You can mitigate your misery to a certain extent. It's like you don't even have that level of control here. It's like no, it's misery is what we say. When we say the pain stops, that's when the pain stops. There's nothing you can do, no amount of confessing, pleading, begging, betrayal. We are in total control all the time. And like that's, if you just sit down and think about that, it's like, fuck. It's like, this is a nightmare.
I mean, that's what makes Parsons extra sad is because he basically did everything they told him to, and he was still wrong. Yep. So there's no winning. Because the pain runs the machine. Because I need fear. Fear makes the world move. We cut to a presentation about when the orgasm has been eliminated, and it's just basically like talking about it's a threat to thought crime, or the other way around. Like this can lead to thought crime, which is basically, I don't know. It's based with people about enjoying sexual thoughts. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, I mean, yeah,
And
it's two people coming together for the act of sex. Basically, like, oh, this is like own life. This is like, again,
yeah.
people could have their own thoughts during the sexual act. They could start having their own like concepts and about who they love and whatever. So it's like, no, we've got to get rid of this.
Because
That's like,
they're also constantly bringing up birth rates and stuff like that too. So there's the things like that. It's like we need to make people, but it can't be out of love or lust. It's like, but we need people. God. um, Julia hands once a message through an ink pencil. Is that what they call it?
yeah, which
Okay.
I don't know what that signifies, but
I guess it's double speak or whatever, or news speak or whatever. So, or is it double talk? What's the phrase? Double? No, it's double speak, right?
yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Where it's basically it's two words that should eliminate themselves, but they mean something. Am I getting that wrong? Is that another concept?
Hold on. Well, I've got the Newspeak dictionary up here, so I'm yeah, because there's a few like concepts.
Oh, I mean, they bring up the concept thing of the what's the phrase like freedom of slavery, uh, what thought or ignorance is strength, and what's the other one?
Yeah, what are the principles of the party? Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. Freedom is slavery.
Okay, yeah,
Did I say that wrong? I said that
wait,
backward. No, it's freedom is slavery. Ignorance is.
strength. There's one more.
Yeah. Why am I repeating it? I'm supposed to be an expert in this, and I've already forgotten.
War
like,
is
the
peace.
War is peace. That's it. War is peace. Yeah, it's called doublethink.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's a few different things that like they all run together here. Because they're in terms of like, because doublethink is like basically what we would call cognitive dissonance,
Yeah.
where it's like two separate concepts that just completely are incompatible, but you hold them both in your mind. And then later on, you get into the concept in Newspeak called black white, which is what happens during Winston's interrogation, where you just believe whatever the party says, no matter how absurd it is on its face. And then there's thought crime, which is like that's actually a because like doublethink and double speak are not like crimes like that. No, that's how you're supposed to work. Like, you're supposed to automatically accept whatever the party says, and regardless of how contradictory it is. But all those things kind of get mashed together, but they do mean things, or they do mean different things, but they seem to all mean the same thing too. So, yes, but they're having an art symposium where they're talking about artificial insemination will be the new way to have children.
Okay. Yeah.
And because the red sash that Julia rips off in the kind of the woodsy sex scene set to music earlier, that's actually the sash of the Junior Anti-Sex League. It's like women who have committed, when they wear the red sash, it means they won't have sex.
Oh yeah, because they're talking about like having all these people pledged to abstinence, and then like they're going to be artificially inseminated. So
The triumph over the orgasm will lead to a perfect society. And the way people act sometimes, it's like they might be on to something, but you're not going to get that.
I was here. Okay. Oh yeah, Winston's back at the junk shop. He rents out the room upstairs for like $4 a week, which he just has a wad of cash here. Which I'm like, I don't know if Winston's supposed to be rich or not, but he seems kind of. Maybe that he's just lonely. He doesn't spend a lot of money, so I don't know.
Winston is this is kind of like the Soviet conundrum of the 50s and 60s after World War II, when they actually kept raising people's wages, but there were really no goods for them to purchase with said wages. So yeah, Winston probably has all kinds of money, but there's just nothing available to buy except Victory Gin. Again, in Russia, you didn't have potatoes, you didn't have bread every day, but you always had vodka, which kept the population passive. Because you don't feel hungry when you're drunk. As a matter of fact, you get drunk a lot faster, if your stomach's not full. So yeah.
Then we cut to some more propaganda group therapy theater. um, here's yeah. There's where the delineation of the different. If you have the proletariat, or no, not the proletariat. What's the upper class people? The inner
Inner party.
party. Yeah, because they all sit up front and they basically have no emotions, and then like the
No.
outer party is the people yelling. Which I thought at first when I saw that, I thought it was a delineation between like young and old people. Like the old people like kind of like know that it's like to be quiet and not say anything, and the young people are trying to put up. But it's not really that. It's just. Um, then we cut to Julia shows up at the rented room. She's got a bag full of stuff. She brought real sugar, white bread, jam, a tin of milk, and coffee, which coffee is always a thing in dystopian fiction every time. Because it's all like, oh man, like coffee's been gone. It's supposed to be that's supposed to emphasize your dystopia is that the coffee no longer exists. Um, which, like I said, it's in every dystopian thing. I remember a lot in the the mirror universe or the other universe in Fringe.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like
Because
they,
basically the Columbia had to be glassed or
yeah,
something so you can get coffee from there. They were trying to genetically make it so you could grow it in Florida.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
Because that's like one of their jealousies of the other side is that they still have coffee. Like they don't know how good they have.
they just have unlimited amounts of coffee.
um, yeah, she talks about the inner party being bastards and like having all these luxuries. So this is where we kind of get a glimpse that like, oh, like there's a class of people when there probably shouldn't be.
Yeah,
um, Julia makes Winston looks away, which he looks outside at. Like, I'm assuming this is a prole here. All she does is like do laundry and sing, and here they're like he's like jealous of her.
yeah.
He says
Is
something.
jealous of her freedom. Like
Yeah,
she just, and it's almost like she's like an animal. Like
yeah,
it's just her. 'Cause I forget what they said in the book. It's like watching a bovine animal just eat grass. It's like no worries, never a thought, won't see the bullet coming. Something like that was. I believe that was in the book, or I could be. I don't know. Now I'm probably mixing up different dystopian
yeah.
books like this I've read, but yeah.
I hear Winston says something about her, like something like she turned a machine song into something beautiful, which I don't know what that is or whatever. Or
Well,
she
because
just
all the songs she knows, that's put out by the Ministry of Truth. Those are
it's
just
some parties.
generated
Okay,
by the drum. These drum machines seem to generate books, music. They're described as that way. Uh, but yeah, that is also an output of the Ministry of Propaganda
okay,
because everything has to be controlled because you can't sing songs like from an actual past. Some people might be like, "What's that?" Like when the person or the old guy singing like you owe me 2 farthings, say the bells of St. Martin's, I'll give you 3 lemons, it's something like that. And it's like,
yeah.
you're like, what's a lemon? It's like, that's a citrus fruit. Wouldn't be in Airstrip 1 at least.
But he looks back when Julia says she can, and she's got a dress on and some makeup. So this is also supposed to be like, oh, you'd never see this. And then we cut to them naked in bed.
Yeah.
um,
Smoking.
then we cut to Winston writes in his diary, freedom is the freedom to say 2 + 2 = 4. If that is allowed, then all else follows. So this is his biggest retort to totalitarianism government. So he is the resistance. um,
And he starts a podcast.
then we cut to more cubicle time. Winston replaces like, oh, this is the chess winner. I can't remember. Yeah. Oh well, he does basically the same thing. He changes history.
Yeah, he's just creating lies in the Ministry of Truth.
Then we cut to Winston's like walking to work, and he's acquainted by O'Brien, who claims to like his writing, which is like a fun thing. So it's like, because I want to think like he would be the author of these things. He's just like changing, or does he like have some kind of oversight on his changes or something?
I believe, yeah, he's put in a position because he has some kind of literary writing style, something they like, something that makes him qualified to do this work well.
But like
It
Winston's
doesn't.
like
It's not
changing
really.
things, but like when he changes things, is he suddenly like the author of the article, or is he known in any way?
I'm not sure. Because I'm assuming they all work together because they all live together.
Yeah.
So I'm just guessing they just Parsons also works in the Ministry of Truth somewhere. I don't remember what he does, but I'm guessing they know because Winston does a lot of because they never see him typing because they're always using something called a speak write. So everything he says is like transcribed.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's got a byline in it or anything.
Yeah, that's the thing I was wondering about. Like, because O'Brien here, the way he talks about it, makes it seem like he has a byline on his articles he falsifies, or maybe he just has oversight over the stuff, and that's where he's seeing it. So, Winston gets invited by O'Brien to look at a new Newspeak dictionary. So give him a leg up, I guess. But yeah, O'Brien is one of the inner party people. So. Then we cut to Julia has some toast and jam in the nude. 'Cause I guess, I guess that's a British dream or something.
Yeah.
Now you just need some beans and toast or whatever.
Yeah. Bangers and mash.
Here's where Winston and Julia like look at that painting on the wall and they remember something, but they don't like know what it is. That's the thing that Nathan was saying about like St. Ives and there was 3 lemons or whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
And they're looking at a picture of like a church or like a drawing of a church, I should say. Winston wants to know when they can meet again. She says not for several weeks. It isn't safe. Here she says, I love you. And then Winston just asks, is the resistance real? And she says, no, none of it's real.
Not even my love.
Which I'm guessing here, this is like she likes Winston for some reason, but what Winston wants out of her is a resistance. Like I guess that's his dream. He just doesn't state it out loud necessarily.
Yeah, he just wants something to believe in other than just the dull tyranny of this place.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. That's the other torture about living in this totalitarian police state. It's essentially boring. Like, what are your recreational activities? Just nothing.
Staring
Drinking,
at nothingness.
smoking,
sleeping, and even they control that. That's where dreams happen, and people get ideas in dreams.
Yep.
Then we cut to Winston's walking home at night, and here's where it's like a bomb falls near him. Then we cut to the cubicles the next day, and it's like busy with like people working overtime on propaganda because there's like people sleeping in the. I didn't know if that was dead bodies or people sleeping at the job, or this is also a shelter when there's bombings. I don't know what's going on here.
Probably, I would say a combination of all those things.
Okay.
But I'm not sure because this all has its memory imprinted from the Blitz, so that's where this is coming from. When London was just being firebombed by the Luftwaffe all the time. At least that's what I got out of it. This is reminiscent of that because Orwell would have lived through that, so he would know about it.
And then we also get a blending of lies here because they need Eurasia to be their ally instead of their enemy. So now they need to pretend that like it's always been that way. So
yep.
And what's the other country? There's Eurasia, and what's the other one?
Eurasia and East Asia.
East Asia, that's right. Winston wakes up crying next to Julie after dreaming of his mother, which we get into the dream where its child steals chocolate from his mom and his sister and then runs off, and then when he comes back they're gone, and so he just has no idea what happened. He assumes like he's stealing the chocolate killed them somehow. Well, and there's rats left in their place, so that's where. So like Winston never actually saw his mom covered in rats and dead. It's just that's what he thinks happened. That like the rats ate his mom and sister or something, And those were the good old days because you didn't have Ingsoc then.
Yeah, I guess when Winston was growing up, and again, this is not explained in the book or the movie in any way, but it's kind of implied in like the what's going on potential history of that's when the Civil War was going on between the capitalists and Ingsoc.
Yeah.
So that was like a civil war within Oceania, which basically it's the old British Empire essentially.
Yeah.
It's everything from Australia to the United States, and then we also control South America somehow. But you don't know if any of that's true.
Yeah.
You just never know.
Um. Then we cut to Winston's like in a working elevator to go see O'Brien. He's an inter-party member. O'Brien, played by Richard Burton, has like a lush, clean office. He offers up wine, which like I'm not.
Winston doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
O'Brien's like, it's called wine.
I'm not even sure if Winston likes it, but he drinks it. So, and then like
Well, I know Winston likes booze, so it's like, well, this might not have as vicious a hangover as Victory Gin.
And then O'Brien's just kind of like, yeah, have more. Like you you have no idea how rare this is, but once we open the bottle, I just got to drink it all. So, and here O'Brien gets up and turns off his TV to the amazement of Winston, which is probably like the biggest giveaway of like a thought crime, I guess. It's like, you can turn that off. It's like, yes, it's our privilege, but he's like so awed by it. It's like, now it's suspicious. Like, why would you want it off? But yeah. What is that? Oh yeah, here we get O'Brien like talking about the resistance. Now it's being a thought crime to insist the resistance isn't real. Which is weird. If your goal of your government is to not be resisted, why are you worried about? Why is it a crime to think there is no resistance? And it's like, oh, because they create the resistance. Like, that's how this works. I mean, sort of. I don't know. And then O'Brien gives Winston the new dictionary, and then he leaves. And then we cut to Winston's looking over the new dictionary, and he finds like hidden pages, and this is where it's like Goldstein's manifesto or something, like in between all the pages, or the pages are like glued together or whatever.
Yeah.
Then we have some more propaganda group therapy theater. Then we cut to Winston's reading Goldstein's writings to Julia in bed, which he's really taken by him, but she's just kind of like, yeah, anyways. That's not really my thing. But yeah, he's talking about like the necessity for continuous war to dupe society into control. There's a pause. They pause a bit and like stand in the window naked to listen to like the pro lady sing and do laundry again. And then here's where we get like the old greed factory opening, which I didn't know where this came from. Where Nathan put this.
Yep.
Of like, here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head. Which feels weird because that's almost like poetry. It's like, why is it being said? I don't know. I don't know. What's your why do you like the scene, Nathan? What's your interpretation of this?
Because it's like it takes a child's rhyme and makes it into something awful.
Yeah.
Because the camera or the picture falls.
Yeah.
And there's a camera behind it. Because they're both like, they're looking at each other and they're like, you're the dead, and she's like, we are the dead, or yeah, and then the picture falls and it's like, you are the dead, remain exactly where you are, and it's like it's giving orders in this very like police state voice, and then it just breaks and it's like, oh, and while we're waiting, here comes a candle to light you to bed, and here comes a chopper to chop off your head, and these stormtroopers come in and just like, yeah, I mean, just like rifle butt Julia in the stomach as hard as they can.
Well, also they just come in casually. This is what I wrote, like almost like a dream. Like they're not like rushing in; they just kind of walk in. I mean, they break a window with the ladder, but then even then, they're just kind of getting in casually.
Yeah, I mean, they're not like expecting a fight. So like, Winston and Julia have like a machine gun in there or something. It's like, no, it's completely unarmed opponents who are scared shitless.
And then the shop owner comes upstairs, like seemingly commanding the police, and so yeah, he's part of the thought police and sold them out. So have that being then Act 2. So we have Act 3. Winston's in a tiled prison cell, still with a Big Brother screen. Can't get away from Big Brother.
Nope.
Parsons has been arrested and thrown in his cell with him. Parsons says he's an agent of Goldstein, but he didn't know it, and that his daughter sold him out. And so yeah, this is just
He was talking in his sleep,
okay.
which like, oh, that's nightmare inducing.
Yeah.
You can't really control that. So
They wake up again because like yeah, well, I guess whenever they doze off, they like keep them awake, which that was like an old interrogation or torture technique is just sleep deprivation. So I'm
yeah.
not exactly sure if they're doing that here. It just kind of seems what's going on.
No, they are. They're playing like loud music or like an air raid siren or.
Yeah, but I feel
They'll
like
actually go insane if they do that long enough.
well, I feel like that's their everyday life anyways. They probably learned how to block that out by now. But they wake up again and Parsons breaks down like here they're just kind of like it shows them looking towards the screen but not showing the screen, so we don't actually know what's on the screen, but like they're being shown something that makes Parsons keep like breaking down and like trying to sell out Winston, and then he's like, "Don't take me away," and then they take him away.
Cam, he's the thought criminal, not me.
To Room 101, which apparently everybody knows what it is, but nobody knows what it is.
It's the worst place in the world.
Then O'Brien shows up saying that they here it looks like well Winston says something like they got you, making it seem like he's going to be put in the cell with him, but it's like but he's like, no, they got me a long time ago, meaning like I'm part of the system, not necessarily like I'm a resistance. Then we have like Winston's like having a bad haircut done to him. It's just somebody with scissors just randomly cutting pieces of his hair off to
yeah,
get
it's
him
a very weird haircut.
I mean, they eventually get it to where he's like kind of bald, but it's weird. There's more Dream Hills with O'Brien. Then we cut to Winston's on a torture rack, and O'Brien is his interrogator. O'Brien wants to know like who they're at war with. Winston says East Asia, which is correct, except he qualifies that they have been at war with
Eurasia.
Yeah, Eurasia. And then O'Brien starts using Winston's diary against him with like the 2 + 2 = 4 thing, and like oh wait no. Oh yeah, no, well, not just well. Yeah, it is. Yeah, where he's using the finger things, like how many fingers I'm using up, and then keeps advancing the torture rack, and then there's like a break where like O'Brien just holds Winston for a while, and then Winston just like goes back into the position to be torture rack. So it's like, all right, break time's over. Back to more breaking, I guess. But yeah, here's like O'Brien keeps asking questions. Winston tries to tell him what he thinks he wants to hear, but like no answer is correct. And actually the correct answer is I don't know, because that means you stop thinking for yourself. And it's like, that's what they want you to do. And then at some point, even that's wrong. Just being the Mad Libs for the party isn't enough anymore.
Yeah.
Then we cut to O'Brien talks about fixing Winston and then annihilating him from history, which that just seems evil. Says Julia sold him out immediately, which I guess is to be expected. Then we have electroshock treatment going on here, which is where like where it's like it's so bad Winston escapes to his happy place, where now his happy place is the Green Hills, but also he's like a completely converted party member in his dreams, which I don't know if that's him trying to concoct trying to bring up the imagination to be what they want, but actually on the outward he's still kind of like fighting against them in weird ways, because he asks him, like, do you love Big Brother, and he's like, I hate him, and I think that's when he like rips a tooth out of his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is also where Brian says his vision of the future is a boot stamping on a face forever.
Yep.
Winston is like being sort of defiant and saying something will beat you sooner or later, which you hope is true, but we're not going to see that. O'Brien, here's where also where O'Brien claims he wrote the Goldstein book, or at least co-wrote it. So that's where it's like, oh yeah, the resistance is all made up by the party. Um, they release Winston from the torture rack. He struggles to get up on his own. Brian forces him to look in a mirror and like see how like terrible he is, and his teeth are extra bad. So this is where they pull the tooth out of his head, which is that's awful. We have another dream sequence with O'Brien, and then Julia's there. Then Julie gets shot in the dream sequence. Which I don't know. What's that mean, Nathan?
Basically, the death of his fantasy world.
Yeah. Then we cut to Winston's in a cell. He's still a husk, but he's like a better looking husk. Also, his tooth is back, so either they put it back in or they gave him new teeth. Oh, there's a weird close up of teeth later on. I think it's when he's in the chair, where it's like his teeth look like they're painted on, like they've been painted white, but like not all the way. So,
Yeah, that is. I don't. Yeah, I don't understand exactly what was going on there. I don't know if it was dentures or what they're doing or what look they're going for.
yeah.
And I don't remember it being mentioned in the book.
Here's where Winston says he hates Big Brother, and O'Brien's like, no, you must love him. And so he gets sent to room 101. Room 101 has a weird chair in it. He gets chained to it while it's like a covered cage is revealed. And of course, rats are Winston's biggest fear. So that's kind of what room 101 is. They're just using your own fear against you. Which I wonder what Parsons got. Was it just soup with no meat?
Might have been.
Just drowned him in.
Yeah, I got a meatless soup waterboarding.
Winston's begging for his life. Here he's trying to also sell out Julia, which I guess that means she's still alive.
Yeah.
The cage is like a mask and has little doors on it, so they're basically trying to get the rats to like eat his way through his face, which that's his biggest fear. Then we have that. Yeah, he starts screaming that he wants. He's screaming he wants to do this to Julia, not to him. And then they cut away from that, and we cut to Julia walks into a cafe. So this is presumably sometime later. I guess it is. Someone's playing chess in the foreground. Julia sits down. It's Winston that's playing chess. He has hair again, so we have no idea how much time has passed. They admit to selling each other out, which I guess it's like, yeah, par for the course. So it's all right. It's not like we really love each other. We just exist in this terrible world. But they also say like they say they should see each other again. So it's like that's your hope for the movie. These two awful people that don't like each other get to see each other again.
Well, they're also in the. This happened earlier where Winston, this Chestnut Tree Cafe.
Yeah.
Which is like a unique place, I guess, in this world because they have like the flavor. You can get the peppermint flavor with your Victory gin.
Okay, so that's going okay.
Yeah, and,
he kind of looks like he's in a doctor suit. The waiter, as they call him,
mm-hmm.
And so I never saw that drop stuff before. So I was like, did they just poison Winston? So okay, that makes more sense now. It's just a little bit of flavoring with your gin. So
well, this is where all the people go that have been like because the chess player that he erased, that he made into an unperson.
Yeah.
Winston saw him early or later at the spreading chestnut tree.
Oh, okay.
And there was a little rhyme that went along with it. Under the spreading chestnut tree, I sold you and you sold me.
Okay.
So this is where all the interrogated Ministry of Love people go after they've just betrayed everyone in their life. You go to drink like peppermint flavored gin before they're shot because they're all presumably executed.
Oh, okay.
We don't know, but this is what happened to the other people.
Oh, so like them saying they'll see each other again is just like like that's not going to happen.
Well, it's the final. Yeah, it's the final like fantasy they're allowed because remember like when Winston and O'Brien are like O'Brien's like we will meet in the place where there are no shadows, and what that is like that's the last vestige of fantasy inside Winston's skull. It's like the party has that now too. There are no more secrets. There are no that because that's what Room 101 extirpates from you. It's like you can never escape the party. It's even in your mind.
There's a video screen of Winston admitting to a bunch of crimes that he didn't commit.
Yeah,
Which I
having sex with men and women to
yeah.
spread syphilis, and it's like, whoa, Winston was having a wild life.
He regrets that.
Why? That sounds crazy. Bunch of like pale skin and bones people just having wild syphilitic orgies in some London bomb crater. It
Yeah,
sounds
get it while you
amazing.
can.
Yeah.
We see Winston writes 2 + 2 = dust, but he doesn't complete it. But he grabs a night piece, so that's up to you what that means.
Yeah.
I don't know. A night piece moves 4 places, maybe. I don't know. Whatever.
Night moves sideways and attacks from the shadows like the thought police.
The waiter gives Winston some gin and then drops, like you said, the flavor drops in there.
I think it's peppermint. I don't remember. Something like that. Yeah.
Winston cries at seeing Big Brother, so like, which either means he loves or hates Big Brother.
Yeah.
Because the only other thing he cried about was seeing his mom in a dream. So then we just freeze on Winston and the waiter and the Big Brother images. There's a TV screen and then there's a poster. They're just sitting right there, and it just holds as the credits just sit there. So it's like, now it's up for you to decide. Did anything good happen? Like, no.
Yeah, just the Soviet anthem, Soviet style anthem plays. Yeah.
So yeah, that's 1984. The movies.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is a one. If you're feeling depressed, if you're in a bad place in your life, I recommend you watch this movie because whatever you're feeling, and I'm not even kidding. Whatever you're feeling bad about, it's like, well, at least I don't have to live like these people.
At least you get to feel bad, not being killed for feeling bad.
Yeah. Because it is the absolutely amazing visual adaptation of a book that you must read before you watch this movie if you want any context for what's going on. And it's not even the fault of the people that made the movie. They made the best movie they could.
No, they didn't make a movie that wasn't 1984. They made 1984.
But they made 1984 with almost no exposition, which was a good choice, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
which is like actually the complete opposite of the book. The book is all exposition, and the movie is
mostly exposition. So it's like, how do you make a movie out of that? When
but
you don't
I mean, that's the problem with every novel adaptation is that you have to you either have voiceover or you exercise all the voiceover, all the narration, and then you just have to figure out how to do that visually, which it can be difficult. So.
But yeah, it is required that you read the book before you watch the movie, but you should because the book's amazing. It's kind of like Dune. It's like you've got to read the book before you watch the movie. You're not going to have any idea what's going on.
Yeah.
But once you do, it's worth it. And understand, in 1984 is not a long book. It is not a difficult book to read. It is not prosaically dense or anything. It's pretty straightforward.
It's free on Audible, so if you got that.
Oh yeah, you can listen to it on Audible. That's just as good. I don't care what anyone says. That's just as good. So yeah, but I think if you do that, you'll get a lot out of this movie. And if you don't, you'll get a really visually cool movie. And if you really want to get into it, like I said, then after this, read Solzhenitsyn. Find out what really. Maybe don't read The Red Wheel because that's like over 1,700 pages, but. You can do a day in the life of Anton Denisovich and realize that's not a fictional world. That really happened.
It's a part of the Criterion Collection, so increase your Criterion Collection. So
yeah, get this. It's not even that expensive. It was $14, so it's not. But yeah, this was something that was like, like I said, this is one of my childhood companion books, like Lord of the Rings. It's like for some reason I just always came back to this book. There's things about it I like, and it led to like wider studies of other things. It's like because the fake totalitarian societies are disheartening. The real ones are even more disheartening because they're real. Now the thing about real totalitarianisms versus Orwell's totalitarianism in 1984 is this was almost a perfect totalitarianism.
Yeah.
Thank God the totalitarianisms that exist in our world are imperfect, flawed, and there is a real world that people can see outside of it. There's maybe they can't get to it, maybe they can't. Because I like how everyone else is like, well, people in North Korea should just rise up. It's like, yeah, okay, you first. Show them how it's done, because that's a lot easier said than done. Again, in America, where you can just sit in a room full of small arms and like, well, I would resist if I was there. It's like, well, you wouldn't have any of this shit if you were there. Um, but yeah, that's the global spanning totalitarianisms. Or this is probably the most bleak concept movie we've done since Soylent Green, which is like, yeah, that world sucks too. So it's almost perfect, and in a movie and as far as how the movie looks and how it feels, it's perfect. I mean, it's amazing, but it requires some reading and being into some things. This isn't a movie that everyone's gonna like, oh wow, I'm glad I watched that, because it is bleak, dark stuff.
Yeah.
There's almost no action. It's completely through to through depressing. And the only good thing, the only feel good you can get out of it is, thank God I don't live in a society like that. But also don't think that societies like that are like, oh, this is what Nancy Pelosi wants to do or something. Like I said before, we're a million miles away from this in America. I mean, or we're an economic downturn away from it. I don't know which, but this is this is not something like politically everyone throws this around like a football. It's like, oh, this isn't us. So stop.
This can't happen overnight.
Yeah, it can't happen quickly. It can happen, but not quickly. So,
well, we're sending a probe into space containing the supercut of the imperfect collection of this Verhoeven Effect. Nathan, what scene from this movie are we shoving into space?
We're gonna do it differently this time. We're gonna show the trailer. Because hopefully that is weird and bad enough to encourage people to like, well, let's see what the movie was like. Because this trailer is weird.
Did you ever see the trailer in your at the time, or is this the first
No,
time?
I actually watched the trailer for this podcast. I was like, oh, this is weird. I just never seen the trailer. I had a VHS copy of the movie until I got this, and it was like, oh wow, that's terrible. It's for. I mean, it's not. I didn't think it was terrible. Like, God, I hate that watching. I was like, oh, that's weird. That's what they thought was going to be the seller of this movie. It's like, huh?
We got an '80s music, and then like we're gonna make a music video out of 1984 with like an '80s like electronic pop band. It's a weird combination.
And just Annie Lennox just belting out sex crime, sex crime. It's like, what? But really, that's the only way you can get people into this movie, is just the fun factor of like, oh, that's weird and goofy. What's this movie like? Wow, nothing like that. And I got to do homework to watch this movie.
You can find us in Letterboxd with username VHE. 1 out of 5 stars. What are we giving? 1984.
Now we're just going to have to give it 5 for my nostalgia sense.
All right.
I mean, I was thinking 4 because you really have to read a book to watch the movie, and we're doing a movie podcast. But in this case, read the book; it's worth it, and then watch the movie. So I'm saying 5. I still stand by it.
Well, you can find us at verhoeveneffect.com. There you can we have listener support. You can support us at a monthly stipend, either 99 cents, 49 or $9.99. You can rate our podcast on whatever podcast platform of your choice. You can rate us whatever you want. The only thing the algorithm listens to is the highest rating. Remember, you control the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't control you. That's really the big brother, the algorithm.
Yeah. See, this is the world that Orwell couldn't imagine. Because right now we're on our telescreens creating propaganda for our own private ministry of truth.
You can find us on Twitter.
And there is an overarching authoritarian government watching everything we do and say, but we manage to be boring enough to slip under the radar.
Yeah.
That is a survival technique.
Yeah, the best way to escape totalitarianism is be yourself.
Yes. Be deeply uninteresting, vaguely dumb and misinformed. And they're like, oh, couldn't be a threat at all. Our system is safe.
You can find us at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect, Blue Sky Social at Verhoeven Effect, Facebook at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory and watch both this and that show live and unedited. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
Goodbye, America.